I find that people oftentimes express concern to me in society in general. They're concerned about how fathers and how men are pictured in television. Fathers are oftentimes represented as fools or doofuses, People are concerned that every man on television is pictured as Homer Simpson, for example. I guess I'm weird. I'm not too concerned. I'm not too concerned about that. And I guess the reason why is because I'm a man and I can take a joke. Well, I understand. Sometimes they're making a joke and I get it. Okay, that's a joke. It's funny. I can laugh it off. And why? Because I think I'm comfortable enough in my own skin that I can laugh it off. But while there are jokes about men, there's jokes about fathers. And while there are jokes out there, we need to understand that the men of this world and the men who are followers of Christ, there may be jokes about them, but they themselves are not a joke. Gentlemen, followers of Jesus Christ, you are not a joke. You have a purpose in your family, you have a purpose in your church, you have a purpose in the society. And there is a general denigrating of mankind, of men, that is out there. Don't let that happen. You have a place, you have a purpose, you are designed by God for particular roles. Take those roles and use those roles for God's glory. My big concern is not how we're depicted upon television, but how we behave in real life. I have an interesting little thing. This came from fatherhood.org. They take their information from the U.S. Census Bureau, so I thought this was interesting. Let me read it for you. The Father-Absent Crisis in America is how it's entitled. If you want to look it up, go to fatherhood.org, and I'm sure you can find it. There's a crisis in America, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. 18.3 million children, that is 1 in 4, live without a biological step or adoptive father in the home. Consequently, there is a father factor in nearly all of the societal ills facing America today. Research shows that a child raised in a father-absent home, he or she, that is the child, is affected in the following ways. And they give about 10 different ways. There is a 4 times greater risk of poverty. There is a 7 times more likely for a young girl in the home to become a teen mother. They are more likely to have behavioral problems. This is all fathers not there. More likely to face abuse and neglect. There's a 2 times greater risk of infant mortality. More likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. More likely to go to prison. 2 times as likely to be obese. More likely to commit a crime. And 2 times more likely to drop out of high school. And it's all linked to dad's not there. Folks, again, fathers sometimes are punchlines of jokes, but you are not a joke. You are important, and you have a role in society, you have a role in your church, and you certainly have a role in your family. Don't take the lessening of the valuing of men in our society, don't accept that. You have a role, and you need to fulfill that role. Now, we've been going through old men in the Old Testament. We've been looking at that quite a bit. Today we will take a departure from that. Today is a standalone message, which we don't have a whole lot of old men in the Old Testament to discuss today. So today, and in my previous messages, there's times I'm taking 3 chapters at a time, which is a ridiculous amount of material, and I certainly own up to that. Today we will rectify that. We'll just do 2 verses. Okay? Some of you are saying, sweet, we're getting out early. It's Father's Day. Well, listen fast and I'll speak quickly. How's that? All right. The passage we're looking at is to a church, okay? It's not written to an individual, but it's to a church. And so since it is written to a church, it is addressed to a broad audience. It can be to men and it can be to women. Actually, it's to both, okay? So there is an application to both. But as I look at it, I find that it fits very well as an exhortation to men. Again, let me say to the men who are here, you are no joke, okay? You are fierce defenders of the family. That's your job. You are to be leaders in your family, your church, and your society. That's who you are. That's what you're called to be, okay? This is not, by the way, to downgrade the role of women whatsoever at all. but it does. But what I want to do is I want to emphasize the role of men. Let's turn to our passage today. Like I said, I only have 2 verses, so we won't be long. There's 5 components. It's an easy message to outline because there's 5 commands. We'll look at those. Matter of fact, some of the commands in the Greek are simply one word. Okay, go to the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 16, and we'll look at verses 13 and 14 today. So 1 Corinthians chapter 16, 13 and 14. I'm going to read the whole passage. Be watchful. Stand firm in the faith. Act like men. Be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. That's our passage for the day. That's it. 5 things, and though there is quite a bit of brevity there is a lot that is profound. Look at the very first one here. He says, be watchful. Okay? Be the one who is looking over. The name Gregory comes from this. Be the watcher over. That's how it is. Listen, oftentimes trouble comes. Well, in our lives, trouble does come. But when the troubles come, oftentimes it is not obvious. In the church at Corinth, again, I think we need to look at the context overall of this passage. Paul gives us these exhortations in 13 and 14, but they're so important because the church at Corinth, I think, at one time, they thought they were doing a pretty good job, and Paul has to write them and say, hold on a second, the things which you're doing, you think you're doing well, they're not so great. You'll remember that in the book of 1 Corinthians, there was a problem with sexual immorality within the church. It was an incestuous type of situation, and the church didn't seem to want to address this. And my guess is that the church was somewhat patting themselves in the back, saying, see how open-minded we are that we don't have to do that, so we're actually pretty spiritual. No. Be careful. Gentlemen, within the church, you need to be watchers. Watch what's going on. Okay? Watch what's going on. There's divisiveness within the church. Even in the first chapter, we see people are saying, well, I am Paul's group, and I'm Apollos, and I'm on the Jesus team. And you have all these different people, and they're picking up teams within the church. And notice that they're picking out spiritual leaders, okay? They're picking out Jesus, for crying out loud. And so they don't think what they're doing is a bad thing. They think they're putting themselves on a good team in a sense. And Paul rebukes this. He says, what do you think you're doing? Stop dividing Christ. Don't do that. You're not called to do that. You're called to be a people who work together, who stand together, not to be a divisive people. Honestly, I think they thought what they were doing was appropriate. And what Paul says, he says, no, it's not. They're taking one another to court. They're suing one another. He says, stop it. They have a misuse of spiritual gifts. Some people have these really cool spiritual gifts that everybody is pretty amazed by. And they're putting those people at a high level and thinking less of other people. Spiritual gifts which are designed for the building up of the body of Christ, for the unity, are now being used as a tool to separate the church? Stupid. Okay, that's what that is. Paul says, don't do that. Watch over it. See, what's happened is you've allowed your pride to come in the side door, and you have allowed that to affect you. You haven't watched well. Heresy rarely comes, false teaching rarely comes, knocks at the door and says, may I come in? If it did that, then it would be a lot easier to spot, would it not? But false teaching and false practice oftentimes comes from the side. It sneaks through a window rather than knocks. Even in the celebration of the Lord's table, instead of it being a uniting thing, it turns out to be a divisive thing. Once again, they are fighting one another. The rich have some, the poor have another. Some people are completely left off. What we have here in all of these things is pride which has gone off the rails. Gentlemen, do not let sin, do not let wickedness into your family. You are the guardian. You watch over it. My wife has just finished reading a book called The Boogeyman Exists, and he's in your child's back pocket. Cell phones. Your children have supercomputers, okay, within their back pockets, full of all kinds of information, which is both a blessing and a curse. Your children can watch high-definition pornography at any time that they want to. Your children can be involved in all kinds of bullying of people or being bullied. There's all kinds of things there. And you allow them to put them in their back pocket, and there they are walking around. You know what? There's a purpose for a cell phone, and there's good things. We have as a rule in our family, children do not get phones until they're 16 years old, and we are told that we are dinosaurs. Well, sometimes it's good to be a dinosaur. It's okay. I remember when we had kids, I won't name any children, and they begged us for a phone. And we said, nope, 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 for 3 years. And by the time they get done by 3 years, children get tired after 3 years. I found that to be a very good thing. And by the time we allowed it, you know what? They didn't even care if they had one or not. Perfect. I get it. Well, if my kid has a phone, then therefore I can keep track of them, or I can get a hold of them easier, or I get that. There are benefits. I can track them with their GPS tracker. There's benefits. But perhaps the dangers outweigh the benefits. If your child is 8 years old and they have a cell phone, I'm not going to look at you and look down my nose upon you. But I just want you to understand, you better be watchers, gentlemen. You are the guardian. You are the lion on the savannah, and you're making sure that the tribe is okay. Watch. One word in the text, watch. Because heresy rarely knocks on the front door. It almost always comes through the side. Watch. Well, second of all, he says this. He says, stand firm in the faith. Let me put the emphasis on the end here, in the faith. Men are good at standing in their careers. Men are good at standing in their hobbies. Men are good at standing in lots of things, but not always good at standing in their faith. Stand in the faith. Now, I think this speaks both individually and corporately. Obviously, as an individual, you need to be standing strong in your faith as an individual. But the word here is plural, the command is plural, and granted he is speaking to a group of people, so therefore that's natural for the verb, but I think it does carry with the idea that you are to be linked together. This week, or this week and the previous week, I've had a couple of arborists come to my house. I have 5 giant firs in my backyard, and we're looking at those, and we're starting to get a little bit concerned, because when you get a big wind, you see those things go back and forth a little bit. And the branches hit the corner of the house, yeah. I'm not so concerned about the branches. I'm concerned about the tree trunk, which weighs 1,000 pounds. No, a bazillion pounds. It's not 1,000. It's more than 1,000. That's what I'm concerned about, coming crashing through and waking me up at night. Yeah. So that's what I'm concerned about, right? Aren't you concerned? So I have these arborists come out there, and I said, I'm concerned about these, and they're looking at them, and first guy says, leave them alone, they're fine. And the second guy comes along and he says, well, and so he needed a job, so he was trying to drum up some business. But ultimately, even the guy that was trying to drum up business, he says, you've got 5 trees, and they're protecting one another. He says their roots come together a little bit, and the big guy over here is protecting the small guys over here from the wind, and when the wind comes from the other side, that other big tree protects them there, and they work together as a team. And they're able to stand firm because they are working together as a team. We, as men, oftentimes like to think of ourselves as the lion upon the plain, and there we are, and we're sitting out there, and we're all by ourselves. And I'm kind of a lone type of guy sometimes as well, believe it or not. But there has to be times, gentlemen, where you group together with other men to encourage each other in the faith. You do. We have had, through this whole COVID nightmare, we've had our Zoom men's group on Saturday mornings, okay? We usually cancel it during the summer because it's difficult to get people together in the summer. But last summer we had it, and we had people stay with it. Why? Because there was value in staying together at that time. So it's canceled this summer, but we'll restart it in the fall. By the way, if you want to grow your roots with some of the other guys, come. It's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity. I know it's 8 in the morning, but you don't even have to get out of your jammies if it's in Zoom. Come on now. It's a great opportunity. But you link yourself together because we are stronger together. The Apostle Paul, he writes in the book of Ephesians these words, verse 4:11 through 14. And he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds, and teachers to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, for building up the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to mature manhood, to the measure of the stature of fullness of Christ, so that we may no longer be children, tossed to and fro by the waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness in deceitful schemes. He is saying here, you know what? God gave the church different gifted individuals so that they could help the church stand together, that they can intertwine, and that when the heresies come from the side and try to knock you over, you don't fall. And you don't fall because you're linked one with another. It's good to be firm in the faith yourself, but it's better to be firm in the faith linked with brothers in Christ. Watch. Stand firm in the faith. He moves on and he says this. He says, act like men. I thought, well, that's kind of an interesting word. I looked that one up. Act like men. Some people object to this. They say, wait, this is written to the church. There's men and women there, so it can't mean act like men. It needs to be something like courageous. Okay, however, the root word behind it does have the word man in it, and it has the idea of be manly like a man, okay? Like one going into the battle, okay? And that is a courageous act, and women can be courageous as well. I'm not trying to downplay that. But the root word behind it has the word man in it. And why? Because men are supposed to and have an expectation that they will run into the fray. If you're doing the work of a man, if you will jump into the fray every once in a while. Don't be the guy. Don't be the guy who, when he sees a great tragedy happening in front of him, who pulls out his phone and videos the whole thing and doesn't act. I was watching something on Facebook this last week, and there was this fight, a fist fight, in a McDonald's restaurant. I thought, what in the world? And I used to work at McDonald's, so any fist fights at McDonald's interest me. So that's why I'm looking at this, right? Sorry, I guess it's weird, I know. But so I'm watching this, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And it's a woman who is attacking these other women. So it's virtually all women who are fighting one another in a McDonald's restaurant. And I'm like, what in the world's going on? And somebody who's doing a really good job doing the videography, very firm hand, I must say. Watching. And then all of a sudden, at the very end, I hear this male voice. Hey, I got it. It's a pretty good video right here. Don't worry. I know this woman hit you, but I got it all on film. And I'm like, dude, man up! Jump in the fray. Take the woman who was attacking the other woman and get her out of there. Are you kidding me? His job, he thought, was to video it. Take a video. Oh, come on now. That should not be the state of manhood. Jump into the fray. When your family is struggling, gentlemen, you may be the guy who everybody looks to make the unpopular decision. And there's hesitation there sometimes. If I make that decision right now, my daughter's going to hate me. If I make that decision, my son's going to think I'm some sort of coot. Man up. Do your job. Sometimes you have to make the difficult choice and be thought of poorly for the sake of the family. That's courageous. It's doing something which is not popular for the sake of the family. And when you help the family, you help the church, and you help society. When you have society crumbling, it's not just because society decided to crumble, it's because families began to crumble, and oftentimes it's because men were not men. Man up. Do your job. Gentlemen, I believe that it is within you to do that and to make those tough and difficult decisions. Women in general tend to be more nurturing. And because they're more nurturing, they're more accommodating. They're nicer. Okay? Your job, think of it, so, think of a parental group, okay? You have the mother, good cop, right? And the father, oftentimes, is the bad cop. This is how it goes sometimes, right? You chickens. Yes! Yes! That's how it is! Oh, my goodness. Look at that! And so there it is. And you need that beautiful balance because you can't have permissiveness, and at the same time you can't have ogre. Can you? No! And in this beautiful design, which God calls the family, he has a husband, he has a wife, he has got a mother, and he's got a father, and they balance themselves out very nicely. There's roles for both. And sometimes they don't always see eye to eye, but by the way, parenting, they may not see eye to eye, and if they disagree outside of the view of the children. Get it figured out there, and when you come to the children, you are a united force because you're a team. Because children are very perceptive, and if they see any crack, they will kill you. Man up. I've recently seen some people going around and younger men, and they're having discussions, and they would say, I'm a grown man. You can't disrespect me. You shouldn't have to say that. If you have to inform somebody that you are a grown man and they should respect you, it probably means that you're acting like a toddler. Let your behavior gain the respect of the people around you. Act the part of a man. Man up. You don't have to do the touchdown dance in the end zone. As one famous coach said, when you get there, hand off the ball to the referee and act like you've been there before. Man up. So watch, right? Stand firm in the faith by yourself and also with others. Man up, be courageous. And he scoots on to the next one over here, and he talks about the idea of being strong. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Now, one of my many, many jobs, I used to sell exercise equipment. So I used to sell exercise equipment and do the installation. And, I was a good salesman. People would come in and I could, do what salesmen are supposed to do. Talk them into the fact that they needed to buy something which they didn't need to buy. And so they would buy these things, and then the second thing was, well, how do I get this ridiculous contraption? How do I get to my home? And sometimes you'd get, a weight machine which is as big as about half the stage. It's got pulleys and weights and all kinds of stuff, so my job was to sell it, and then I'd have to take it there, and you'd have to put it all together. That's the job. We sold lots of treadmills. And we found that there became a trend in the purchasing of treadmills. And people started coming in, and they started to ask this question. Oh, does it fold up? Right? Does it fold up? Well, that didn't make any sense to me when we first started hearing this question. What do you mean, does it fold up? Well, you take the bed and you fold it up and you can put it up against the wall, get it out of the way, right? And we were, hardcore exercise people, big free weights, big machines, treadmills, that you could use in a gym. A folding treadmill. But we found that we had to get folding treadmills because that's what people wanted. But here's the deal. Anybody who buys, and I'm going to offend you, ready? Okay. Anybody who buys a folding treadmill has no intention of using it. when you're more concerned of how you can put the exercise equipment away, you're not going to use it. It's true. And it turns into this laundry hanging device. And we did excellent business in buying back the treadmills and then reselling them because people didn't use them. We understood what type of client we had when they asked this question, does it fold? Okay. All right. This one here doesn't because that's for real people and for who actually want to exercise. But here we have this one for the pretenders. And so you just knew what type of equipment you needed to show them. If you're going to be strong, you have to exercise, right? If you're going to be strong, you have to exercise. And you can't be a pretender. You can't take the exercise equipment and fold it up. If you're going to be strong spiritually, you can't go to the Bible bookstore and buy the fanciest Bible with the nice cover with your name on it and then leave it on a shelf and gather dust. Or the fancy Bible atlas or the fancy Bible application, which will do everything for you, but you never open it up and never learn to use it. To be strong spiritually means that you have to get into the Word of God. To be strong spiritually means you need to come before God in prayer. To be strong spiritually means you need to rub shoulders with fellow Christians. It does. Iron sharpens iron. The book of Ezekiel, in Ezekiel chapter 22 and verse 30, it reads this way. God is looking for someone who will be strong. As if God is speaking, and I sought for a man among them who would build up the wall and stand in the breach, who would stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. If you want to look at the dissolution of the family, dissolution of the church, dissolution of the society around you, and all you can do is moan and complain and put your hands up, look to yourself and say, what can I do differently? Can I become strong in the Lord? Become strong in the Lord and stand in the gap. Well, I'm just one. God oftentimes uses just one. God is not afraid to use small amounts of people. Perhaps you will be the David for your society who runs at the giant in the name of the Lord. Well, the last one here is the last verse, verse 14. It's all one verse. Let all that you do be done in love. Do all in love. Some of you say, oh, well, here's the soft stuff, the love stuff. Okay, be loving, Be a good dad and pamper your children and that type of stuff. By the way, feel free to pamper your children. Be nice to your children. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. I'm the father of boys, okay? So, it's my boys and I relate well with my boys, I think so anyway. You have to ask them later, but I remember my wife, she told me, she says, okay, you do things differently than I would ever have thought. We had once upon a time, this is a little bit off trail here, but once upon a time we had a competition. Surprise, surprise, because I'm a competitive person, and my boys had some competition in them too, still do. And for a while we had the best competition. My wife was, it was abhorrent to her. She couldn't believe what I was doing, but she's like, well, it works. We had a competition which was called First Hug of the Day. And when I would walk out of my bedroom, my children, their eyes would light up because there was a competition as to who could give Dad the first hug of the day. It was bragging rights just for the day. Cool, first hug of the day, ha, I got it. That's how you are competitive with your brothers in a nice way. But for me, this was great. I got to love my children in a way that they needed to be loved. I think it was this morning that Joseph got first hug of the day. So No, we don't do that competition anymore. Although we did get Father's Day. You gave me a hug. It was nice. Well done, Joseph. He also gave me this cream for my scalp as well. No, it's like a green tree skin moisturizer. What's what? Bald head moisturizer. I think it's lovely. So it's very thoughtful. It's very thoughtful. Fathers, love your children. Love your children. Understand how your children operate. Some of your children, if you try to do first hug of the day, they're going to freak out, okay? All right? Others, it's a great thing. Figure out how your children work. Figure out how they need to be loved, okay? Figure that out. Love is not soft. Love oftentimes is sacrifice. Protecting your family from danger, protecting your church from heretics is not soft, but it is loving. Sometimes you are called to do the difficult things because you love those who you are protecting. Love Christ, love your family, love your church. Once again, because you love your family, you love your church, you may be the chief in charge of saying no to things. Or beforehand, your wife say, well, come on, let them do this. You may have to make the hard decisions to say no. That's your role oftentimes. If we scoot back, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, you get the love chapter. Pick it up in verse 4. Love is patient, kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. If we were to go to 1 John chapter 3 and verse 16, we get a definition of love, and we know love by this, that Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. We see definitions of love here. Love is not necessarily hearts and romance, though that has its place. Love oftentimes is sacrifice. You are taking care of others. We look at these 5 things. A short section: watch, stand firm, man up, be strong. And whatever you're doing, do it in love. Those 5 things. There's this ridiculous terminology out there now. They talk about toxic masculinity. Okay? Men being too manly. I don't know anything about toxic masculinity. I do know something about biblical masculinity. Gentlemen, be men. And you look at these 5 things, there they are. There they are. You're an individual who is watching. You're an individual who is you are standing firm in the faith. You're an individual who is manning up. You're an individual who is strong. And all that you're doing is in love. This is fantastic for your family. It is fantastic for your church. And it is fantastic for society as a whole. That's what God wants us to be. So let us be that type of man in our society. Let us be those types of men in our society. The world wants to make men and fathers a joke. The Homer Simpsons of the world. Okay, I can laugh at Homer. I can take a joke. I've got thick skin because I'm a man. But I am not a joke. And neither are you as you follow the Lord. Follow the Lord and live out the God-given responsibility and role which he has for you. Gentlemen, you are no joke. You are no joke in the Lord.